What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We continue with our 2023 schedule preview and projected record series. Washington State is up next, and this is a team that I think that was really underrated last year. If you go back and look at their season, only 5 regular season losses for them, but if you look at who they lost to, it was the top teams in the conference. They lost to Oregon by only 3 points. They lost to USC. They lost to Oregon State. Utah, they lost to them by only 4 points. And then at Washington. So you lost to the best teams in the conference. They took care of business against the teams that were, lower in the conference. So we'll see if this team can maybe make a jump, surprise some people this year. But I think they were better than their record last year, and then didn't finish things very well in their bowl game. They finished 7-6 if you count the bowl game. This is the schedule for 2023. They will open up on September 2nd on the road at Colorado State. Then they play Wisconsin on the 9th at home. Remember, they shocked the world last year. I did not see that one coming. That was one of the biggest surprises from especially early in the season last year. We'll see if they can beat them again. This time they get them at home. They get Northern Colorado on the 16th. And then they'll play Oregon State on September 23rd at home. So you get 3 games at home in a row there. And that Oregon State game is going to be really, really big. That's a big opportunity for them to get off on the right foot in the conference. Oregon State's going to be good this year. You look at UCLA next there on October 7th, the team I don't think they played last year. They'll play them on the road. Then they get Arizona on the 14th at home. October 21st, they go on the road to face Oregon. Then they go on the road to face Arizona State. So back-to-back road games there. And let me backtrack a little bit. Their bye week comes before UCLA. So after Oregon State, before UCLA. That's why, again, I go back to that Oregon State game. If they can get that win and if they can knock off Wisconsin, they could start 4-0, then get a bye week before a huge game against UCLA. So that Oregon State game could be really huge for them if they're going to go on to have a really good year. But back-to-back road games there with Oregon and Arizona State. Then they'll play Stanford on November 4th at home. And then on the 11th, it's a road game against Cal. They'll play Colorado on a Friday on the 17th and close things out in the Apple Cup on the road at Washington. So you look at this schedule. They don't play Utah this year. They do have to play Oregon. They don't play USC either, so you don't play Utah or USC. That's a pretty good draw there. Their toughest games in the conference will be Oregon State, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington. And you get a nice stretch there from Arizona State to Colorado. Those will be easy wins, but those are all games that Washington State don't have a great shot in. And so you get a nice break there after, from Oregon State to Oregon. That's a pretty tough stretch in those 4 games. But again, they do get that bye week in there. So let's look at the projection here. This is the scale that we use. If it's a 50-50 game, it'll stay in the white. That's a game where I think the spread will be less than a touchdown. Under 20, over 80, those are games where I think the spread will be 20 or more points. 20-29, 71-80, those are games where I think the spread will be double digits, 10-19 points. 30-39, 61-70, those are games where I think the spread will be about a touchdown, 6, 7, 8 points, kind of in that range. So we'll start with the easy wins. Colorado State, Northern Colorado, these should be easy wins. Colorado State was not very good last year. No reason to expect them to be a real threat. It is on the road. They're not going to be favored by 30, but probably a 21-point favorite in that game. Northern Colorado, that one's going to be a really big number there. But they should be able to take care of business in both of those games. And then you've got some games where I think they'll be favored, again, by about a touchdown. Arizona State, Stanford, Cal, and Colorado. And, Colorado is such a hard one to predict. It is possible, and I know I've said this many times, it's possible they're going to be really good. It's possible they're going to be a top 25 team. But you look at how bad they were last year, and I'm not just going to jump them up that far. I just don't think that would be fair to do in these projections. So I'm still viewing Colorado as a mid-tier team, basically, in the Pac-12. The game is at home. It's a Friday night. I think Washington State will be favored by about 6 there. They took care of business against Arizona State last year, Stanford, Cal. These are all games where, again, I think Washington State will be favored. They should be the better team. Doesn't mean they're going to win all these games, but they should be favored in really, I think, all 5 of those games. And then you get to games where I think they'll be an underdog. Oregon, Washington, those games on the road, you're talking about potentially top 10 teams this next season. Those are going to be really, really tough ones. So I think they will be double-digit underdogs in both of those games. Again, we're going with the idea that Oregon and Washington are top 10, 12 teams this year, which is what most people believe. Not necessarily giving my predictions here. Again, we're just kind of giving you a conservative projection for these teams. And then you've got Oregon State and UCLA. I think those teams will be favored over Washington State, but not by a lot, maybe 6 or 7 points there. But I do think you'll clearly know that those are the favorites in those games. But those are the types of games that Washington State can win. And again, I go back to that Oregon State game at home. That's a big opportunity. And then you have Wisconsin. I think that's the one 50-50 game. That's the one game that really could go either way. Again, I looking back to last year, what Washington State did. Wisconsin's going to be a different team this year, so that one's a tough one to predict. So another reason really just to put that one in the 50-50 category. So what's the projection? Well, 6-6. That's the projection here. Again, they'll be favored in a lot of these games, but they'll be underdogs and big underdogs against Oregon and Washington. If you count Colorado State and Northern Colorado as wins, and you count Oregon and Washington as losses, then that will just tell you they're going to go 4-4 in those other games, which I think is pretty fair. Possibly, I think they could get to 7-5 or 8-4 if things go their way. 6-6, seems pretty fair. I would say 7-5 is more likely than 5-7. But again, when you do all this, when you do all the numbers, you use this formula, you average it all out, you get a projection of 6-6 for Washington State in 2023.